Welcome to
The Top Knot Squad,
a podcast for the mom,
parent,
or woman who doesn't exactly fit in, but loves hard anyway.
Hosted by Naya, Adriana, and Alexis.
3 friends passionate about their beliefs
and unafraid to speak their minds.
Are you ready to laugh, be vulnerable, and keep it real with us?
Top knots are not required.
All right, so on today's episode, we'll be breaking down our review of Tully. We just saw it. It's a film about a mother who hires a night nanny to help with her newborn. It was directed by Jason Reitman and written by Diablo Cody. Did I say their names right?
I think so, yeah.
We'll also be talking about our own experiences with postpartum and then who knows what else. But just as a warning, we are not going to limit conversation about the film. So if you don't want any spoilers, you might want to wait till you see the movie and then come back and listen.
Yes.
And then also just a trigger warning because we are talking about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and a sensitive transitional stage in life.
Yes, very
Absolutely.
sensitive. Before we go on, we would actually like to invite you guys to join us for Theater and Block's regional premiere of Cry It Out, an emotional comedic play written by Molly Smith Metzler, and she is the writer of Shameless and Orange is the New Black.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I know. That's really exciting. Cry It Out is at Zach's Weisenhut stage for a limited 3-week run, May 4th through May 20th. It takes an honest look at the absurdities of being home with a baby, the power of female friendship, the dilemma of going back to work, and the effect class has on parenthood in America. You can get discounted tickets using code CRYBABY at checkout and by using the link provided in this episode's description. Mother's Day performance is at 8 p.m. Monday, May 13th, and is a baby-friendly performance. So BYOB, bring your home baby. Super cute. But I guess we'll begin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, who wants to go first? Because we have been holding out.
Man.
We saw this movie about an hour and a half ago, and we're dying to
I have
talk
so
about
many
it.
things to
We
say.
saw the 1:45 showing. I think we were done by 3:30.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to talk about it, but we couldn't because we wanted to save it all for the podcast. And then we met some random ladies who asked us to take their picture in front of something in the theater, and they're like, "What did you think of the movie?" We were like, "I'm sorry, we can't tell you.
We
what
can't
think of
tell
the
you.
movie."
Our lips are sealed. But not anymore.
Nope.
I want to start.
Sure, please.
Go.
With my so I did read some of the spoilers. I made myself stop. I read one main article that was kind of circulating. It was a motherly article. I don't know if either of you saw it.
I think that was the one that we all read, right?
I think that was.
Oh, we all read that
might
That one, yeah. And then
No, that was this. It was another one that we all read.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Well,
I read the motherly one too, even though I said I wouldn't.
I definitely read that one, and basically the headline for that one and the point of their article is that in the film they identify the main character's experience as postpartum depression when what she's actually experiencing is postpartum psychosis, and so I think a lot of the backlash was around, this really does a disservice for mental health awareness.
Yeah, it could be confusing to some moms.
Yeah. So it was pretty intense, people's reactions surrounding that, how dare they, they want to boycott the film. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to exit that from my brain and still go into this film open-minded. And that's not what happened.
Nope.
So that article is a lie.
It is a lie.
Yeah.
So I have a theory about that. So the movie was originally supposed to be released on April 20th, but they pushed it back to today, May 4th, for whatever reason, and that's about 2 weeks. So I'm honestly wondering if maybe during advanced screenings, people would fill out comment cards and leave that comment, possibly. So, I mean, it's quite possible that they went back and edited it a little bit to take away some of the controversial stuff. So that may be why. Regardless, that it didn't live up to that article.
No, yeah. And they wouldn't have to even do very much because in the end, they just blur the end a little where they never actually say she has postpartum depression or psychosis or they don't diagnose her.
Yeah, they don't diagnose her.
Yeah, they just, it's just very clear that something is wrong.
Something is up with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not well.
Yeah. So that would have been easy
help.
to edit.
Yeah. There is one point where the doctor in the ER at the end asks her husband, does she have a history of mental illness? And he said no. And then he goes, well, she had some depression after her son was born. And so that's kind of the only
mention of depression.
Or postpartum depression.
But
even.
It wasn't identifying her experience as that. The doctor never actually gave a conclusion. The only thing the doctor did say is, we think she's very sleep deprived. And he was confused because he was like, but she's doing all these things.
But she had a night nanny. How is that possible? She's supposed to be sleeping. Yeah.
And just like her behavior.
Yes.
Of like, because I think he thought, she was like, well, I guess she was actually in the end.
What?
Like how she was cooking those elaborate meals.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Like
mania. It was almost like she was functioning.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. She was in a manic state.
But anyways, that was my main beef is that, so I think the lesson there is, don't just believe whatever article.
Don't believe the spoilers. Yeah. Don't believe
Totally
the hype,
agree.
whether good or bad.
Because ultimately, I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I thought it was a very accurate depiction of a lot of what moms deal with. And I think people should see it.
I do too.
And ultimately, whether the backlash up from that article, it still is like good. I'm glad that happened because it created conversation about maternal mental health. So no matter what, it still created conversation, and it's allowing people to get informed about different things.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree.
I agree with that.
So are you...
Oh, yes, go.
Well, no, not me. I was going to say, what are your thoughts on it, Naya?
I liked it. I agree with Alexis wholeheartedly about it not living up to those spoilers and all the bad things we read about Tully being a postpartum doula. They never called her a postpartum doula. They explicitly called her a night nurse, though. Well, like what Alexis said.
A night nanny.
A night nanny, sorry. Like what Alexis said during our coffee house talk where we weren't talking about it, I swear. But a lot of what she did are tasks and support that postpartum doulas give, whether it's with infant feeding or helping with children or talking to the mom about how she's feeling. That is a lot of what a postpartum doula does. But they never explicitly called her that. And also there was, I think maybe I can't remember, maybe the spoiler that we all read, where they were like, oh, they make Tully out to have sex with her husband and this, that, and the other thing. But if you think about it, Tully is a manifestation of herself. At 26, I think is what the age was. And so technically she's doing it herself, and it's not another woman stepping in to do that, to have relations with her husband.
And I think if I had seen the film without having read that spoiler about the sex scene, that in that moment, without any outside information, as I was watching the film, I would have thought to myself, something's not right here.
This doesn't make sense.
Like, I think that's how they meant for it to be, that was like the beginning of the twist.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That was probably the very beginning of the twist to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you feel the most uncomfortable, because that was really uncomfortable.
I was like, I mean,
like, what's happening? What?
Yeah. And then Charlize Theron's character Marlo is like, just go with it. And I'm like, you guys can't see my face, but I'm making a face like, what the hell's going on?
And you were sitting next to the single man.
I was sitting next to the single dudes. Yeah. Surprisingly, there were a couple of single dudes sitting next to me. And the first one walked in and I was like, oh, he's surely he has got to be waiting for his girlfriend or his wife or his partner, somebody. No, another guy came in and sat down next to him. And I was confused, but I'm like, that's okay. Maybe they will make supportive partners someday to some woman who's just had a baby and is trying to figure herself out. The other thing that I really liked the movie, aside from what Alexis said, is that one of the children of Marlo, who's Charlize Theron's character, he is neuroatypical. He's not diagnosed with anything in the movie. They do talk a lot about him having trouble at school and having outbursts and having consistent behavior, like rituals that he has to do. And so I liked that they addressed it. I liked that they focused on it as a challenge for the mom, because I think that that's not something that we often see. Neuroatypical characters in a lot of movies are kind of, I mean, if you think about like Rain Man or something, he's this genius, but in this case, you're seeing kind of the other side of it where it's not all, really, really smart. There's a lot of trouble with it, especially in early years and going through the education system and things like that. So I really liked that. I've got notes on my iPhone, so I'm just looking at those. I did not make those during the movie. I made them after, I promise. the thing that I really loved about it was that it talked a lot about losing yourself in motherhood, especially those early days when you're leaking and aching and still probably bleeding, honestly. But those first few weeks that can be so difficult, they didn't glamorize it in the least. I mean, it was probably very close to what all of us really experienced after birth, with either feeding difficulties or pumping all the time and dropping the phone on our baby's head and knocking over milk that we pumped and, all of that. So I really appreciated how true to life the character, it was filmed, the conversations, the way that Charlize Theron kind of portrayed the emotions of this new mom. I thought she knocked it out of the park with it. I don't know if she has children or not, but she nailed it.
I know. I totally agree.
She does have children.
She
I
does?
think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask you about the scene where she was engorged.
Yes.
How realistic was that?
It was kind of realistic in the sense, okay, so first of all,
Naya's a lactation
I'm a
consultant.
lactation consultant. I don't know all about lactation, but I am a lactation
She's a
consultant.
boob
So
lady.
I know some stuff about it. But there's a scene in the movie towards the end where she's at a bar and she hasn't expressed her breast for a long time. And all of a sudden she's like, and doubling over in pain, clutching her
I know.
chest.
I thought she was having a heart attack.
I thought so too.
Panic attack.
And then I was like, oh no, it's her right side. She's clutching her right breast. But basically she has a plug and she can't work it out because of whatever. So I think that if she hadn't had as much to drink as she had in that particular scene, it probably wouldn't have been a realistic portrayal. But I feel like if you've had a lot of alcohol or consumed a lot of whatever, and you're not quite all there, where you're having a hard time focusing on what you're doing, it probably would be a little bit more difficult to get the milk to flow. But the scene where Tully kind of made that hot compress out of paper towels, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. So that was accurate.
Yeah.
But the scene where Tully's like, "You're empty," and Marlo's like, "Yeah, no, your breast is empty. It's time to move her to the other side." I'm like, "No, your breast is never empty. You can make milk on demand." That's false. It's like tears. Just when you think you're all cried out, you can make more tears. It's like that with milk too. The flow might be a little slower. You may have to do some breast compressions and baby might get a little impatient, but it's in there.
I wanted to ask you that. I was curious what you thought.
No, otherwise I thought it was great. I mean, it's true if you're, if you've had a couple of drinks, they say that alcohol can help with milk letdown, and it can to a certain point. But I think if you cross over a particular threshold, just like with everything else, it gets really hard to focus on what you're doing, and that can actually inhibit letdown, which is what I think we were seeing there.
Yep, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so thoughts.
Your turn.
For me. So I totally agree with you that the depiction in the beginning of how motherhood is, it was so raw and so real, and the repetitiveness.
That is the perfect word for it. Yeah,
that whole repetitive scene
was
totally like
change
the
diaper
music
feed
and everything.
Yes.
It was like,
and
damn.
I like that they it was almost. I mean, it was so monotonous and so repetitive and over
Groundhog
and over.
Day.
Yes, and they kept repeating the same scenes, and I'm like, yes, that is it. Because you're stuck in this loop, and you have to be, because you're in survival mode.
It's what you have to do.
Yeah, in that beginning. So I really liked the way that they depicted that, and that they were so accurate with that. I want to talk about the dad.
Oh God, yes.
Yes. Oh, I had a note about that. But
I have mixed feelings. I kind of know where Alexis is going there with this. There's a scene, or there's several scenes, where he's totally zoned into playing a game, and I love that they keep pointing out that he'll say things like, she left the house and there was no one watching the kids, and they're like, well, you were home, weren't you?
Yes.
And he's like, oh,
she called him out on
yeah.
his shit.
And there's several times that happens where he'll be saying, kind of pointing out that there's no one available for the children, but he's there all along. He could do it too. Yeah. So I really liked that. But yeah, he definitely would check out often with video games at night. Yeah. And that really irritated me, because you'd see her downstairs struggling with the baby and, waiting for Tully to get there. And then she'd go upstairs. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, dude?
Or she'd crawl into bed and he'd just be sitting there with like the PlayStation controller in his hand.
No
just
connection.
No connection, nothing.
Didn't even necessarily speak to each other.
I don't even think he
just rolled
acknowledged
over.
her. Yeah.
And so, I was getting really heated with all that. But at the same time, I also started thinking, I wonder, maybe that's his own coping mechanism for everything that was going on. Right. Because I think sometimes with our partners, we don't recognize that they don't know how to deal with this. and they're talking about how he has a lot going on at work and he's going to be traveling. And so those times when he's traveling, and I'm saying this from experience because when we first had Galen and also when we had Jack, Stephen had to leave on trips right after I had both of them.
Yeah.
And it's so weird having him come back, a week later or 2 weeks later or whatever, and having him miss, it doesn't seem like a long time, but 2 weeks in the life of a newborn is huge.
Yeah.
And, they come back and it's so hard for them to get back into that loop with you.
Yes.
And I did want to, forgive him for that. And I do like that they I feel like they were trying to address that a little bit, that maybe that was his own coping mechanism.
Right.
And what made me make that decision was in the scene that I also think they did an amazing job. While I was super uncomfortable with the sex scene with Tully, it made me realize how she saw herself and how, when our postpartum bodies, especially me recently, I've been having a lot of hangups with this. You don't want to be intimate because you feel your worst self.
No, absolutely.
Like, not only are you overtouched, you're overstimulated by little ones, but you also don't feel attractive.
What did she say? She said, my legs have veins, my breasts have veins, my veins have
veins. Yeah. And that was so accurate. And I like that they, Tully is this perfect, gorgeous.
God. She's beautiful.
Yeah. But what I loved was his reaction when you realize that she's not real. He's all like, let's go for it. I love you.
Yeah.
Like, you see this like passion for him, and that's not Tully he's looking at. It's her.
Right. It's her that she's like.
So I was like, oh, okay, you've redeemed yourself. And maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I really think they took the aspect of the dad and someone did their research, because I feel like that was really...
Does Diablo Cody have children, I wonder?
I don't know.
Because I feel like a lot of this you can't write.
No.
Like, you have to experience.
Yeah,
Either that or
I
Jason,
totally agree.
Jason Reitman, I think, was the director. Somebody has gone through this before.
Yeah.
I think that kind of speaks to, I actually recently saw I Feel Pretty with...
I want to see that. Amy Schumer. Yeah.
And it's all about like body image and how confidence like really plays a huge part in that. So like actually in that scene, Tully being
so confident,
that was her confidence.
Yes.
Almost. Like that was, she had to do it with this persona of Tully to be able to let the confidence come out.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was what was attractive to him,
Yeah.
So
no, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, there was also a scene where the daughter commented on her belly. And I actually thought it was interesting how a lot of the audience laughed, because that was not my reaction.
No,
my reaction was like sadness.
Sadness, mine too.
Yep.
And I was like, I wonder if the people that laughed are not moms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they haven't experienced it or had anybody close to them experience.
Yeah, especially because she's so defeated at that point. She's all sweaty and done. And I'm like,
then some child just dumped milk all over her.
Yeah.
And so she was like, fuck it. I'm just going to take my shirt off.
She was so calm in that scene.
I know.
I've lost my shit with spilled stuff.
I think she was just so exhausted.
Done.
That's really it. Yeah.
Well, she was a shell. Like, she just wasn't there anymore.
And they talked about that a little bit, about how a comment with her brother and sister-in-law, I think they had said it's almost like somebody took her, blew her match out or something like that.
Oh, yep.
And so that was something that stuck. And I liked that could be seen by people who were not in the immediate household, and those changes. I don't know. I liked that dynamic, though, between the brother and the sister.
Yeah, because he also says at one point, I just want my sister back.
Yes.
I don't know where she's been for the last 8 years.
Exactly.
Which is, I think, the age of her oldest.
Yeah.
So it was, I don't know. I think it was really powerful.
I thought so, too.
That kind of is making me think about the difference in symptoms. So like most people, when they think about postpartum, like postpartum is a time period. It's the time following birth, but we use the term as this means postpartum depression.
Right.
And postpartum depression is like the main thing that people think of. So like her reaction to that spilling milk on her was more of a depressive symptom reaction.
Right.
Whereas like what I just said, how I have like
rage.
lost my shit, rage, that's an anxiety symptom. And postpartum anxiety is something that can be really common and looks a lot different from depression. So I think a lot of women like feel confused. Like I'm not sad, I'm not crying.
Just mad all the time. Yeah.
So
that's how
maybe
I was.
this is how this is. And there's, I don't need help. So,
do you want to talk a little bit about the symptoms of each? And I know people can Google this, but I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about it anyway. But just a couple of the symptoms, and then we can. Yeah.
You should probably also mention what you do, your qualifications in this. Like, Alexis is legit. She can't say these symptoms. She's
don't give me the pressure.
Well, no, but it'd be. I mean, I can't really be like, hey guys, so I'm a blogger, and
no, you're a woman who has children, so I think that qualifies you to talk about them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the symptoms are the same outside of pregnancy and postpartum. So if you've ever dealt with depression or anxiety, the symptoms are similar. It's just happening in the perinatal period, which, by the way, because of what I said about the term postpartum, there's this movement of trying to use the term PMAD, which stands for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, so that it's more inclusive of the different experiences that women can have. And move away from using the term postpartum depression for all the things, because that's not all the things.
Right.
Which I think is related to why so many people were up in arms about the film initially, because they thought that it was naming postpartum psychosis as depression, and that just doesn't do good for awareness around mental health. But so depression is just feeling sad, crying, lots of shame and guilt, which she had.
She did.
There was some of that early on in the film of like, I'm not a good enough mother.
That blow up she had in the principal's office.
Yes. They don't deserve me. Like, if you're, so from a partner's perspective, or like family or friends, those are things that you can notice early on if there's depression going on, is kind of, what is she saying about herself and her mothering? And is there a lot of shame and guilt within that?
Do you want to talk about postpartum psychosis and what that is? And
so that's like a literal break from reality. It's super rare. It only happens to like 2% of the population. But it's an emergency. Like, it's dangerous.
Those are the hallucinations and the manifestations and hearing voices and things like that.
So the fact that for her, Tully was
a hallucination, basically.
So it's a break from reality, and it means, and a lot of times those can be like someone is telling you to harm yourself or harm your kids, and there's like a lot of paranoia that can come with that. So, which is what happened in the film, because that's what led her to have that car crash.
Right.
But then for anxiety, it's just like, it can be constant worrying. You can have physical symptoms like your heart racing,
intrusive thoughts,
irritability, rage. It can manifest that way. And then there's also postpartum OCD and postpartum. You can also experience postpartum PTSD or even postpartum bipolar. Like, all these things can happen in that time period. And they, and some of the symptoms, even some of the anxiety and depression symptoms, can overlap, and you could be experiencing a range of both. But part of mental health awareness is letting women know that the range of your experience can look all these different ways. And no matter what, if you're experiencing those, one, it's not your fault. You're not to blame. And with treatment, you can feel better.
So something to jump onto that. I know that from my personal experience with postpartum anxiety, I think postpartum anxiety was probably my primary diagnosis, but then there was depression in there as well. But for my anxiety, my husband was kind of my best gauge, because he saw me before I started. For me, it was rage. Rage was my thing. Like, I was irritable all the time. Everybody was walking on eggshells. But he was my barometer, and he knew. He was like, you need to talk to somebody. And I think that in the film, the husband did do that at one point, because I remember him asking her, you okay? You doing okay? Or something like that to her. And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. And I think that was after the Tully manifestation started really being in force, and she did feel fine, but it was almost like she was in a manic state. So anyway, my point of all of this is it can be a really good idea to talk to your partner and have a frank discussion with them before baby comes, and say, look, I want you to read this, and if you see me doing any of these things repeatedly, call me on my shit and let's get me some treatment, because I want to be the best mom and partner to you, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that kind of makes me, I also wrote a note about support is so critical. That's my note. But that's what I kept thinking the whole time during the film, is that even though she was made up, Tully was made up, it also illustrated like how different your experience can be when you do have support, and how that support system makes a huge difference in your recovery. And so related to you, like I definitely experienced postpartum anxiety after Rory, and I had major intrusive thoughts of all the ways he was going to die.
Yep.
And it prevented me from like wanting to leave the house.
Same. Exactly. And we were watching a movie, and I'd get up and I'd be like, I have to check on the baby.
Yep.
No reason for it, but
yeah, but I would have like very vivid images of like, if I get up right now, I'm going to trip right there. He's going to hit his head on the fireplace and he's dead. Like that's what intrusive thoughts can look like. And I think there's a lot of shame within that, because like,
Do you want to hurt your baby?
Yes, exactly. And so women don't want to share that, but that can be really common with postpartum anxiety. But related to support, I probably shouldn't say this in case she listens to my podcast. Right after, I'll just go for it. Right after my son was born, my mother-in-law came and stayed with us for a week, which was awesome. And she did a lot of wonderful things. Like I would wake up and she would just make me food. She did our laundry. She so things were just taken care of. And that was tremendous, because that's a burden taken off of you. But I had a rage episode while she was there. And I don't think at the time that she understood that my husband understood that. And unfortunately, that really kind of was a huge disservice to me. And I think there was some judgment around that too. And so it's important for support people to also build awareness around this and know what the symptoms are, so that if they're seeing it, one, you can give a little bit of grace. Like, I just had a fucking baby. Yeah. And of course I might have some things going on. And two, like how to have a conversation around, I'm worried about you. Let's get you more support. Let's figure out a plan for how to make this different.
Right. Because it could really, if it's not addressed properly, very gingerly, if you will, then mom can get defensive. I know initially I'm like, no, I'm fine. What are you talking about? Everything is fine. You think I'm nuts? You think I'm crazy? Just really, really defensive. So I agree. I think having a plan and then a way to address that with mom is important too.
Yeah, totally.
And then I wanted to talk about something that you touched on, Adriana, as far as body image and the way that we see ourselves after birth. So something that I've done in the past is I've spoken about intimacy and breastfeeding, but also really just postpartum intimacy at a couple of conferences and like conventions and things. So not that this is my forte, but I definitely have done some research in there, and there's definitely a point, just like you said. I mean, we're around kids all day. If you're nursing, it's quite possible that you're touched out from having a small child on you, literally 8 to 10 times a day for up to an hour at a time. And so the last thing that you want to do is have sex. And I'm going to tell this story, and I don't think my husband listens to our podcast, so I think I'm okay here.
I'm already screwed. I'm glad you're...
I'm taking the plunge with you, Alexis. So after my oldest son was born a little bit early, we had all kinds of feeding difficulties after he was born, but he was born early December. And for Christmas that year, my husband got me lingerie. And I looked at it and I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you buying me lingerie? And I have a 3-week-old. Well, no. And I'm like, you want to push me into sex? I haven't even been cleared by the doctor yet. I can't do anything. But no, the point was that he wanted me to see that he still saw me as feminine and womanly and beautiful and sexy, and this goddess that I was even before having children, despite leaky boobs and stretch marks and feeling like, I just shot a baby out of my vagina and all of those things. So it was very sweet, and I was definitely pissed for a long time. But then when he explained it to me, I'm like, oh, I'm clearly the asshole in the relationship. No, but I mean, it's important to just kind of give your partner some grace too, whether it's a dad, a boyfriend, a wife, a girlfriend, whatever. Just give your partner some grace too, in that they're trying to do the best to support you as well. And it can be really hard, especially if you are working or if your partner has a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder. It's sometimes it's almost like walking around a ticking time bomb, especially with anxiety and rage issues, which I think Alexis and I both had. You say the wrong thing and you just get an explosion. You just never know what's going to happen.
It's so rough.
It is.
Crazy.
It is.
I feel like we're talking too much.
No, it's a podcast. This is what we're supposed to do.
I meant me and you.
Oh.
And
Oh,
not
no.
Adriana.
Oh, okay.
I'm just really intrigued by all of this. I think it's so interesting. Now I'm wondering if this is why I got you guys on the podcast, just to be informed, just to listen to both of you all the time. Tell me things. No, I think you're totally right, and there was definitely a lot of parts that hit close to home for me watching that. And
there were some scenes where I know I definitely teared up and I cried a little bit,
man.
just because raw was the word that you used, Adriana. That was it. Like that is how to describe some of those scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
Just very raw, and they'll make you feel things for sure.
oh yeah, definitely.
I felt all the things.
Yes.
I cried more than once.
I thought I heard you sniffling, but I didn't want to like call attention.
Well, I have the sniffles,
Okay.
but there was, I actually can't remember. I've blocked it. I was so traumatized from seeing the scene. I can't remember which scene it was, but I did audibly cry for a second. Y'all might have heard that. I was like,
No,
I didn't hear that though.
I didn't either.
I just didn't laugh. I'm like,
oh,
what?
now I remember. It actually had nothing to do with postpartum. It was the scene with her son at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Where he was like, we don't need the brush. And I was like, I don't know if y'all heard me.
No,
but
I teared up there too, and I was like, oh gosh, promised myself I wouldn't cry. Yeah.
I think that's because I'm dealing with our son and where he should go to school. And
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't fit. That wasn't my story of her son, but there were some similarities, and I was just like, oh. Anyways.
Marlo understands. Total side story, but Jack was kicked out of his first daycare not kicked out, but he was also
dismissed.
Yes. For not fitting in with that group.
Sorry.
Was your reaction like hers?
No, it should have been. I was actually angry because I was like, because the way that it was presented was, something's probably wrong with him socially.
Oh.
It was really, I was really uncomfortable and awkward. I did not know
That's not very
especially with a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
How can you tell that? They're 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just not.
He still shits his pants.
I know. Like, we're still in diapers. But it was good. It was meant to happen because we ended up with one of the most loving caregivers ever. And
we got kicked out of a nanny share.
Oh man.
Yes. And I feel okay saying this because I know that woman is not listening to that woman. So when I first started my clinical hours to become a lactation consultant, Rohan, my youngest, was he was right over a year, just over a year, and he didn't speak a lot. He talked, but I mean, it was gibberish. But of course, my husband and I knew because we were home with him, or we were around him all the time. So I found this nanny share in my neighborhood. It was great. The woman's house was a 3-minute drive from my house. Her son was 2 months younger than mine. It was going to be perfect. Well, for whatever reason, this woman did not want to calm my baby to sleep. She just wanted to put him in a pack and play and walk away, and that was that. And of course, my child cried because he's just over a year. And so finally we got kicked out because they were like, well, your son just cries a lot, and it's really distracting for us to do work from home. And I'm like,
he's a baby?
He's the baby. He's a year old. And there were red flags going off at the time because she was like, well, I had a really hard time getting him down today. I was like, I have a baby carrier in my car. I'd be happy to drop that off with you every morning. He just needs to be close to someone to fall asleep. He needs a warm body. I guess that's not how the other family parented, because they must have just laid their baby down and that was it. But no, mine needed to be rocked or patted or something. And at this end, I felt horrible. I'm like, is it too late to sleep train? So we tried to sleep train, and that was a disaster. Yeah. And so I was like, that was kind of the best thing to happen to us, was getting kicked out of that nanny share.
Sometimes it's meant to be.
And it was seriously like the longest 2 or 3 weeks of my life, just dropping him off there, knowing that he was going to cry and having to go and, support other people. But it's okay. He's now a well-adjusted, almost 4-year-old. So. Well, mostly as well-adjusted as an almost 4-year-old
can be. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. It's hard, this motherhood thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
I also was going to say that postpartum, sorry, I just did what I said not to do. Perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. They can also affect partner.
Yes.
I wholeheartedly believe that. Yes, go for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, they might not be experiencing some of the same physical changes, but They're also might be sleep deprived. They also are just navigating this huge, crazy transition in life.
They're also adjusting to a new family member and trying to figure out work, maybe if they're the working partner. There's
just so many unknowns about parenting, so that automatically is going to increase our anxiety. So it's statistically, I think it's like 5%, but of course those statistics are probably skewed
or underreported.
Yeah,
even.
exactly. But for moms, it's up to 1 in 5, and then that increases to 1 in 3 for women of color.
Oh, wow.
Yeesh. So, really?
Yeah.
And they're probably the ones not saying anything.
I was thinking about why, and I wonder if one, it has to do... I think it more has to do with what we talked about in the last episode, actually. One, like culture norms. So just like extra stigma around it and like family members. So that support system is going to be lacking because there's like no understanding. You just need to be okay and be happy. Like this isn't an experience that we have.
Right.
But also just chronic stress. Like if you have chronic stress, like of course...
it's going to be personified and exaggerated during. So maybe not exaggerated, but you know what I mean? Like it's going to be amplified. Amplified is what I'm trying to find. Yeah.
So I'm referring, I guess I should say that out loud. I'm referring to chronic stress related to racism.
Yes.
Which is why it would affect a person of color more.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
I know.
I feel like we just purged or something.
We did. It was like a brain drain. It was just like, everybody go. Yeah.
So, okay, final comments in terms of just the movie. I know we're going to chat a little bit more about some other stuff, but so final say on the movie and what you felt. Yay or nay, watch it, don't go watch it.
Yay, go watch it. Don't read the spoilers.
Alexis?
I agree with that. I definitely think overall, I don't know that there's a film that exists like this that... they did a pretty good job accurately portraying new parenthood.
Yeah.
So yes, definitely watch it, but also just build some awareness about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. We all should. So that's my little plug.
Yes.
No, I totally agree.
No, that's good. What do you think?
No, I say watch it, but watch it carefully. If you haven't had a child and you're pregnant, I saw a pregnant mom in there and I was like, maybe wait until
like 4 months or so. Yeah.
So I do think, and I think me having had Galen 10 months ago was a little heavy for me.
Yeah.
I probably would want to wait to watch that in like a year or two.
I'm not going to lie. That kind of cured me of my baby fever that I've been having.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that at the coffee shop. Like my husband wants to have more kids, so we might have a third in our future. And watching it was like, fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Okay, now quick, go scroll through Instagram and look at all those babies in the bonnets on like with the flower wreaths and stuff. Quick.
Go do it. Good luck. But yeah, we had also mentioned if you do want something lighter to watch, we have all been watching.
That's what else we were going to talk about.
I was excited about it. That's why I'm reminding everybody. But I think this is a must watch for parents of any, like if you have 1,000 kids or 1 kid.
It doesn't matter. If you had a kid 20 years ago or 2 months ago.
But The Letdown on Netflix.
There's only 7 episodes. You can finish it off in an afternoon easy.
Yep. It took me 2 days.
Yeah.
Alexis mentioned it in a text message to all of us, to our group, and I went and saw 1 episode, and the next day I was like, it was amazing, I'm done. So she was like, wait, you watched it all?
I was like, hold on, I haven't even seen the first one. Let me catch up.
Yeah, but I had been kind of blue and just kind of feeling in a funk, and watching that definitely made me feel like, oh, what?
Yeah.
There's more of us out there.
There are. And it takes place in Australia, which is kind of interesting for a couple of reasons. One is that all of the basically it focuses on a mother, and I think she has a 2-month-old. She's got a relatively young baby, but it focuses on this mother, and she goes to a parenting group. But I think it is like a state mandated NHS kind of parenting group.
I didn't that makes more sense about the facilitator.
Yeah, she was gruff. She's a little gruff. Yeah. A little straightforward, straight shooter. Yeah. But I think that kind of makes a difference too. So it's almost like you're forced to get support instead of having to seek it out, which I'm sure has its own set of, issues, but at least it's there and it's recognized that postpartum is such a difficult adjustment for parents, not just for mothers. But there was a dad in this group that came every week, and he was kind of a stay-at-home dad, and that was his thing, and he loved it. And his wife was definitely more the career woman, but it's a great show. I highly recommend it too. It's called The Letdown.
And just for fun, so I feel like they totally classify every type of mom out there in the group. I thought that was adorable and awesome. And you guys can hopefully respond on our Facebook page, but out of curiosity, which of the moms did you guys relate to the most?
Gosh, I don't know.
I probably related most to the main character. Because I don't know, I feel like she had I definitely didn't relate to the Saham.
I know. That was great.
That was a great one.
That's what I'm going to call it now forever. Because I was a Saham, which is stay-at-home mom for those of you that have not seen the show. That's how she pronounces it. I was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and it was actually quite a crisis for me and not the right fit. Yeah. And it was kind of an emergency to get me away from that. So which I see some of that in the main character of like this, I'm not very good at this.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. I think I would be a cross between that mom that loved her job so much and then the Saham, because there's definitely some days where like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to deal with your whiny asses all day long. Then other days where I'm like, I miss my babies. I miss my kids. Yeah.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I feel like that does suit you or fit you.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I love the Saham, so I would have liked to identify with. Or her name's Barbara. I'm cheating right now. I'm looking.
Okay.
That's the character, but Audrey is the main one, which I definitely. I
couldn't remember her name.
Yeah. There were similarities between us that were so eerie.
I think I know which one.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, it was just intense. And I try not to share this a lot on my blog, but. So most people do know I'm atheist, and Steven was raised Catholic, like hardcore Catholic, altar boy.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking
all
of.
through high school. Yeah, so the main character, they're atheist pretty much, and he's adopted her views, and Steven has we've adopted our own views. We've
found a happy medium.
Yes,
maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And we, for the most part, we've done our own thing. We don't go to church. We didn't baptize the boys. So that really, there was a huge connection there. And then also the Sophie, who was the little blonde with like the 10,000 parenting books
and the research.
Oh God, that's me too. So I think those two are probably. But we'll go ahead and post this on our Facebook page because I'm really curious to see who related to which character.
Yeah,
it's really cute.
Yeah, it was a really good show. I thought it was really well written and accurate. Again, I did want to. This word has been coming across my different social media feeds for a while, so I wanted to share it, and I thought it would be very fitting with everything that we've been talked about. But it's matrescence, and it is the developmental phase of new motherhood. It's like adolescence. It's a transition when hormones surge, bodies morph, and identity and relationships shift. And this is from a doctor named Alexandra Sachs, who's written a book. She's a reproductive psychiatrist and co-author of the forthcoming book, How Come No One Told Me? The Emotional Guide to Pregnancy and the First Year of Motherhood. So,
what was the term again?
Matrescence. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
By the way, you're getting the skirt steak.
Oh, for dinner? So, yeah, Dave's blowing up my texts about dinner right now.
I have Naya's iPad and it's popped up.
Yeah.
Nice.
We're doing fajitas tomorrow.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Should we share resources?
Yes, please. Now that everyone knows what I'm having for dinner on Saturday.
Okay, so internationally, there's Postpartum Support International, PSI. You can find them at postpartum.net. They have a Warmline, so it's not a hotline that's available 24/7, but if you call it, you can leave a message and someone will call you back, usually within like 24 hours. That number, PSI Warmline, is 1-800-944-4773. Then locally, there's also the suicide hotline, so that's another national resource. The suicide hotline is 1-800-273-8255. So if you're in crisis, that's another, and they are a 24-hour hotline, so you would get someone immediately. But then locally, PPHA, which we talked about in the last episode, is the organization I'm involved with, the Pregnancy and Postpartum Health Alliance. They have a really good online directory, so you can go to pphatx.org.
Yeah.
pphatx.org. And they have a directory. We said this in the last episode too, but of therapists, support groups,
lactation consultants, doulas, psychiatrists.
And they all have training in perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, which I meant to say that earlier about the difference between a doula and a night nanny. If you're seeking a postpartum doula, like the main difference for me is a postpartum doula is there to nurture mom. A nanny is there to nurture your baby.
Yeah.
So we definitely saw that in the film that Tully was nurturing Marlo. But you also want to have someone who has knowledge of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and can give you the right resources. So PPHA doulas here locally have that knowledge. Not all doulas do. And that was a disappointment I had in the film, was that even though she was made up, and that's probably why.
Yeah.
I was like, if she were not made up, she clearly did not notice those symptoms.
She didn't get the training.
And she should have.
Yes. Yes, because I think they were glaringly obvious for sure.
Yeah. So just a disclaimer, not all doulas have that training. And then there's also, if you call 911, you can request a mental health officer. So if it's for a mental health crisis, if you call 911, they have a mobile crisis team of officers that are trained in mental health scenarios. And so when you call, you can request for that to happen. So that's here locally. And then Naya had another.
And then there's a behavioral health facility called Shoal Creek Hospital. It's a Seton facility. And if you are a parent or a breastfeeding mother anyway, and you need to go there, you can bring your baby with you, and you can request for lactation care or lactation services, and a lactation consultant can come to you and provide assistance. However, I think part of that includes screening for different things. So I don't know as much about that, but I just found out about it, and I think it's fantastic.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, I didn't know that. You said it was new.
It was new. I think it's been about a month or so that it's been going on. They don't get calls very often, but they're there. It's available if needed.
Sweet.
All right. So we have armed you all with the resources and what we thought about Tully.
Yes. So we would love to hear what you think too. If you've seen Tully, please let us know what you think. If you like it, if you hated it, if it ruined motherhood for you, whatever. We want to hear it.
If we didn't discuss something that we should have,
yes,
tell us.
Please tell us. Yeah, we're very open to your feedback, especially about that.
Before we go, we'd like to remind you all to go see Theater and Block's premiere of Cry It Out. Naya, Alexis, and I will be seeing it next week and can't wait to share what we think. Let us know what you all thought of it. Get tickets at theaterandblock.org. That's TheatreEnbloc.org, and make sure you use code CRYBABY at checkout to get them for only $10. Thanks for listening to Top Knot Squad. If you like what you hear, then be sure to click the subscribe button in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a review. Want to internet stalk us? Find us on Facebook or Instagram at Top Knot Squad and interact with us. We love making new friends.